Morning everybody, my name is Wade Bagley with Waverly Farms LC in Burkeville, Virginia, and today we're going to do a little how-to tutorial on how to install a overhead irrigation system inside a 96 by 30 foot high tunnel. This is the high tunnel we got here. We got it with a grant a few years ago, but we've been using a Rainbird sprinkler system in here just to water down everything. This is a cover crop that we just tilled up a few days ago, but we wanted a little something different, especially for cooling some of our spring greens off once the heat of summer comes up. So we're gonna install a overhead system that's gonna run in the corner of each of those pipes right there on the overhead supports to that we can turn on and put on a timer so to water them off during the heat of day when everything's super hot, and will keep the plants from bolting as much. We have a frost-free spigot over there that we're going to run our hose from. We're going to just run a hose straight to the corner of our support beam right here on the edge of the high tunnel, and bring it in the corner, and then run an elbow right here to make the hose come up this post. Clamp it on with 1-inch hose clamps. Run it and put another elbow right there and run it across this beam to about midway right here so it doesn't interfere with the electrical system with the fans and everything. Then we're going to take another elbow and run it to the first cross piece. We're going to put a crossways piece of 1-inch poly mainline tubing and zip tie it, that cross piece there, and put a T right about in the middle. From there, we're going to split it off both ways and then put a 90-degree elbow at each corner to run the main 1-inch poly tubing down each side of the high tunnel. From there, we're going to attach a sprinkler assembly right at each cross piece so that the weight of the water hanging through the assembly doesn't cause the pipes to sag in the middle each place. What we got, you have an option. We got all of our stuff from Berry Hill Irrigation. It's a great place if you ever need any irrigation supplies. The assemblies that we got, they cost about $4 each. We got the you can either get no drip assemblies or drip assemblies. The no drip, obviously the water doesn't drain out of the line when you cut the irrigation off. That way you don't get any any air in the line. I chose to get the drip type because that way it will drain out, because most of the time that we'll be using this irrigation system anyway will be in the early spring when temperatures can dip below freezing, and I didn't want the pipes to freeze while they're up there at the top of the high tunnel. But with those assemblies, which cost about $4 each, where'd they go? Here they are. We got little mini wobbler attachments, and they screw straight into here, which is extremely hard to do with one hand, but forget it. There we go. And anyway, they hang down. The water will hit the piece. See if I can get to focus on it. Come on now. Well, anyway, the water hits that central piece and causes it to wobble around, which causes the cone that the sprinkler will eject to cover about half of the area of the high tunnel. So me and Lucky, my man, who ran away, okay, he's over there now, we're gonna start setting it up, and should take about a couple hours, and then we'll show you a little bit more after we get the tubes hung up from the support beams. So I forgot to do this little segment earlier, but the supplies you're going to need for this is you're going to want to start with about a 250-foot roll of the 1-inch poly tubing for your main line and your T line and your header line from the hose. You may need a couple more scraps. Other than that, that's why we have these old pieces laying around. They're good enough for the parts to go run up the support posts to feed the main lines going down. In addition to that, for a 96 by 30 foot greenhouse, you're going to need around 20 of the sprinklers, depending on sprinkler assemblies, depending on how many how much or how densely you want the area watered. This will cover it pretty much evenly. In addition, you'll want 20 of the mini wobblers. You need a hole punch in order to punch the holes in the poly tubing to stick it. Okay, Lucky, thanks. In order to stick the assemblies into the poly. And you will need 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 elbows to run the tubing along. We have some that are black and then some that are white. They're the same as long as they're 1-inch elbows. They're good. And then you'll need 1 T to put smack dab in the middle of the first cross piece for the main line to jut into, and then to run over to each corner of the support beam. Lastly, second to lastly, you'll need zip ties in order to zip tie them to the supports. Figure 8s in order to put ends on the poly at each end at the ends of the greenhouse, and then some good old pipe cutters and a pipe wrench and a hammer aren't bad to have just in case you need them. So that's the tools you'll need to get everything done. So we're unrolling the poly tube in line with each side of the supports. Now you aren't gonna need it to extend all the way from end to end because the supports stop two brackets from the end of the high tunnel on either side. So that knocks off about 8 feet or so. Well, maybe not quite 8 feet, about 6 feet or so on either end. So if you have a 96-foot greenhouse, you're only really going to need about 84 feet of hose down, line down each side. To make it a lot easier on yourself, you probably want to roll them out, especially if it's cold, a few minutes before you want to actually put them up, and do a little something else before. That way they will start to unroll themselves, because they can get a little cantankerous, and then they'll try to roll back up on you if you try to do it too soon, after put them up too soon after unrolling them. They have that muscle memory that plastic normally does, so they can get a little rough. Alright, so we got to the point of hanging the pipes up and everything. So we just dragged the pipe all the way out the back of the greenhouse, and then we're feeding it through, looping it through. Kind of have to get up on the ladder to feed it through each of the pipes. And then once you finish feeding it through, we started strapping it down. Now this is the already strung up right hand line. What we did was we cut some blocks about 5 inches long, about 1 inch wide, and we strapped them to the pole, to the pipe above each support beam to make sure that they won't kink when the water fills up. It gives a little extra support. Then we zip tied them with 4 zip ties, 1 at each end to hook the piece of wood to the pipe, and then we crossed up 2 zip ties across the pipe to hold it in place, and she's not going anywhere. Then this being the end piece, we're also putting a figure 8 on the end. So with the figure 8, you just slip one end up and push it up a ways, then you kink the pipe like so, and then you feed the pipe into hard to do with one hand, there we go, into the other end, and just pull it back down like that, and now kink it up. So yeah, you just do that same thing all the way down the end. And now we've got a very nice, secure mainline pipe. Alright, so when you go put the wobblers into assembly, don't forget the thread tape. That'll make everything leak free. Also make sure when you're putting the thread tape on that you put it on the right, going with the threads. That way you don't have to worry about them going against each other. Like so. My thread tape's being a little cantankerous this morning. I think I drank a little too much coffee. I'm getting a little bit wiggly in the fingers. But then just screw her on in there. Make sure she's good and tight, but not overly tight. So basically just tighten as tight as you can by just using your 2 fingers. Like so. And that should make a nice tight seal. You might want to tighten them up again right when you put them into the poly tube, just to make sure they haven't come loose with the heat making the plastic expand as the day wears on. But that should be nice and tight like that. All right, we got both mainline pipes strung up now. So now we're putting in the sprinkler heads. Going to be putting them right next to each of the support cross beams. That way, all the weight isn't congregated in the middle and making the pipe sag. So first thing you want to do is take your hole punch and take it and punch a nice little hole right there. Pretty doggone close to the thing. This is hard to do one-handed. There we go. And punches that way. You can't really see it in the video, but nice round clean hole. And just take your sprinkler assembly and she's gonna pop right up on in there, just like that. And there you got a 2-foot sprinkler assembly hanging right next to the nice strong support, so that the weight doesn't make everything all saggy. Okay, so we finished hanging up all of the sprinklers down each side, looking mighty fine if I say so myself. So now we're going to work on putting together the piece that's going to be bolted along this support beam right there to be the T for the main lines going down. So I have it cut. We stretched it up there, and I cut the pipe at the right length. I have it anchored down to help it extend out. Now we're going to put a T right here in the middle, and then a valve on either side, just in case we need to cut off one side of the high tunnel from being watered or not. When we measure this to cut this, where'd the pipe cut? There you go. Nice lucky. When you cut it, this is the exact length that it needs to be end to end. But the length, there's going to be a certain amount that the valves and the T will take up in its own length. That length is going to be approximately from one end of the white to the other end of the white, and from the end of the coupler, end of the T to the other end of the T, like right there. So we're going to go and cut out a section that long from each side of the pipe. All right, so finished the hose, got all the pieces clamped in, the valve and the T, and here you can see how I cut out the section from the middle to match what amount of room of hose the valves and the T are going to take up. So this line will be roughly the same length as it was when I started, when I cut it. Next step, hike it up there and bolt it to the crossbeam. Here we go, got the header assembly done, all stretched out. What I did is I zip tied the pipe to the pole at each valve and at the T. I also took a couple hose clamps down the way and clamped it on there for a little extra support. And then at each corner at the elbows, I daisy chained a couple of zip ties and tensioned it up to the corner, so that way this is nice and tight and there's no way this is going to sag. The T, as you can see, is angled a little bit downwards because we're going to attach that board right there to run to that 4x4 or 3x3 actually. It's going to clamp the pipe that's going to run from there to there is going to clamp onto the board, and so we need the T angled downward a little bit so that the pipe won't kink. So that's going to be the next step. So what we did was we drilled a little slot. We're super cheap, so we just drilled a slot with a drill, only thing we had on hand, in order for this U-bolt or whatever you want to call it to fit in. The metal piece right there is going to go through that slot, and we're going to take this and use it to bolt it to the piece of post right there where the T is, right underneath the T, and then it's gonna run down to the 3x3. And she is finished. We took that piece of wood and we bolted it on to the cross beam and screwed it onto the 3x3. Took 1-inch hose clamps, clamped on the pipe down the middle of the piece of wood. We did a 90-degree elbow over here, did another 90-degree elbow, ran it down, and then did 2 more elbows to run it back out to the spigot. And on the spigot we got our filter and our regulator, and needs to be a little bit lower to the ground, but this was a pre-made assembly we already had, so just for a test run it will be good enough. But eventually that elbow will be on ground level so that there won't be any chance of the pipe kinking or anything. So back inside the greenhouse we have 16 emitters right now. We normally would have put 20 in, but we did 16 because this area out here looks a little trashy right now. It's got some hay laid down. A lot of times we keep chicks out here during the winter to give them a little extra heat and stuff. So we didn't put an emitter there or there to keep this area from getting watered, because there's a lot of weed seeds and stuff over there that we need to try to get out. But from here on down, we have emitters, and let's give her a test run. All right, let's let her rip. You hear the air getting pushed out.
Uh-oh. Right back way.
She's about to blow. Oh yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Things are wobbling all right on.